Oh, man, look, here's one of these stories.
Talk to you, Paul.
Good to talk to you, sir. Here's one of those stories that when you talk about journalism, you say, okay, you're failed. We're not even going to pass you in journalism because you just didn't give us the rest of the story. A missing woman was found Friday by a fisherman in Texas when he called authorities to report a car in the Lake O' the Pines in Texas. Lake O' the Pines is the Lake O' the Arkansas or Ozarks.
Yeah.
The car was submerged in that lake. He calls. He's a fisherman. He reports the vehicle was submerged about 40 feet from the boat ramp, and when the authorities started getting the vehicle ready to remove it from the lake, they found a woman inside the car.
Uh-oh.
The woman inside the submerged car was still alive and has been listed as a missing person from the Longview Police Department. Now, wouldn't you put in there a little bit more information, how long she has been in there? Because if she just drove in, that's a story. But if she's been in there and she's a missing person for several months, that is another story.
And I wonder if the fisherman was a driver, Paul.
There you go. There's all kind of possibilities.
I'm not sure where they're going with that, but thank goodness she came out alive. That's the biggest part.
Have you reassimilated to normal life yet after the session?
I don't know about normal anymore, Paul, but we certainly we're completed the session, and that's a good thing. We actually only used about 62 or 3 days, I think, of the 90 allocated. Mm-hmm. So we saved the taxpayers money by not being there all the time. So I was real pleased with that, but I was even more pleased with the results of what we did. So we had a very, very good year.
Were there some things that, and there, I think we both agree there are a heck of a lot more things that were positive than negative than this. But when you look at the things that we did not complete that you would like to have achieved, what's on the top of the list, maybe one or two?
Well, I guess it goes with the elections part. I'd like to see the ballot initiative. As you know, we passed it last year. The House wouldn't pass it. Then we went along this year. They said, well, you got to pass one. And it was held up in one of our committees, the one that had worked on it the previous year started back this year, and they weren't able to get an agreement with the House and among themselves at all. So we brought it back on the floor and sent it to another committee and sent it over to the House of Representatives, and we had decreased the number of people that were required to sell or sign to get it on the ballot to about 8%. And we had put in there some things the House had done the year before about not being able to change abortion and that kind of thing, right to work. And it just didn't. It was towards the end of the session. It just didn't catch on with the House, and so therefore we'll be back at it again next year.
You wouldn't think that this rises to the occasion of the governor calling a special session, though.
Oh, it's up to him. If he did, we're going to pass
I'm just asking your opinion of this.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The governor's still going over all the bills we sent him, because we sent him hundreds of bills. I think it was, Paul, 400 by the time we got through.
Wow.
So
he has 10 days to sign each one, or they're staggered on
they have 5 days when we're in session, but I think 15 when we go out of session. So he's got about another week here, I think, before we'll find out which ones he likes or didn't like. So we had some really big things. And Paul, people don't know. You hear about the big things, but I'm glad people like you have these shows where you can talk. We did massive election reform last year. I mean, massive. Mm-hmm. We, for a long time, because I worked for y'all as Secretary of State, for a long time I had always opposed ballot harvesting. Well, we got a ballot harvesting bill this year. And so one time I remember when I was trying to press, someone had signed 153 ballots. And I don't know that person was a great American. I just think they were ballot harvesting. And it turned an election up in Columbus, and I really had pushed on that. We got it this year. Not only that, we got it where we can purge the voter rolls. If you haven't voted in 2 presidential elections, you get a nice card from us. And I had wanted to do that as Secretary of State, and I wasn't able to do it. I was able to do it now. When I talked to one of my clerks at one of my counties, I saw an individual hadn't voted in 40 years. And so I said, why is that person still on the voter rolls? Well, he moved to Chicago, but he told me he was coming back. So I said, man, I don't think he's coming back. And what that is, it cleans up our voter rolls, but it also saves the counties a lot of money. like in Hinds County, they'll sometimes send out 700 different requirements for grand jury duty to try to get 50 people to show up. So it's very expensive to do that, and I was real impressed with that. And we worked with Secretary Watson on cybersecurity. Paul, when I was Secretary of State, we had over 200,000 hits on our election management system on election day.
I remember that. Yeah.
And so I was very attuned to that. And Michael and I worked on over $1 million cybersecurity program for the Secretary of State's office to secure our ballot.
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear about that in the press. I mean, they won't talk about whatever. But those are key things.
Well, no, you do hear about it, but you hear about it as suppressing the right to vote is how you hear about it in some of the press.
Well, I don't suppress. I think it's secure is a better word.
As you did with the Secretary of State's office for those 2 terms, you've put checks and balances in that it is so ridiculous for people to object to it because there's so many ways out, like the voter ID. And the same thing on this one. I mean, I think you have to go 8 years without casting any kind of vote or even showing up as a ping that you're alive before you're actually pulled off.
Right. Well, then you get a letter, and then you don't pull them off until the next election after that. So it really takes 10 years to get them off. But, Paul, I think that's going to end up being about 100,000 people. When you get down to, yes, I do. I thought when I was looking at it when we were Secretary of State, we thought it was about that number, and I expect it's going to be about that number this time. But it saves so much money, and then it makes sure that your ballot is safe.
Let me ask you this, though. If your name is on there and you're just not voting, let's say you're not dead and you haven't moved, you're just not voting, you're still being called for jury duty, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, well,
so
yes, and please go.
Who has any problem with this? You know, take me off the damn list. I won't be called for jury duty.
You know, there were people, Paul, that said that they didn't register to vote because they didn't want to go for jury duty. Yeah, and that always just set me right up the roof. You need to remember that jury is a jury of your peers.
Well, I understand it. I'm just telling you, there are a lot of people out there who were, if they were complaining about being taken off the list, but they also complaining about having jury duty.
Jury duty, right?
Then that's a little bit of a juxtaposition in their attitude.
They will feel different about jury duty if they're the defendant or the plaintiff.
Absolutely. One of the other things in our interview with the Speaker of the House, I went into this one because we were talking about maybe making more inroads as far as, and I have no idea where that sound effect is coming from. We had more inroads in the medical industry. You guys provided some dollars for the hospitals out there, but one of the things that's been a burr in the saddle is the cons, C-O-N, and it was something he said he wished that you could have completed. But my question is, why haven't we done something and even had a viable bill come out of committee for cons in this past session?
Well, we started on that about 2 years ago, or I did anyway, on certificates of need. That's what a CON is. Certificate of need that's issued. And where that occurs, for example, is in nephrology. You know, we have these dialysis centers, and they didn't want so many dialysis centers around, so you had to have a certificate of need. That meant that there were only so many dialysis centers in each location. Then it morphed into radiology, and then it morphed into a whole lot of other things. But in the last year, based on conversations that I've had, the major opponent of this were always the hospitals. They were losing money, and they said, we've got to protect our own turf. We actually make money off radiology, and we don't make money off everything else. You're just going to break us, and we went through a whole bunch of that. But during the last year, I have been able to work with the hospitals and agree that if we protected the beds, the number of beds, which is not really a problem in Mississippi anymore, if we protect the number of beds, they would be agreeable to eliminating the certificate of need, and I intend to do that.
Wait a minute. So beds is going to be the major sticking? Well, first of all, many, many years ago, it was my understanding it was not so much private. It was a situation where government hospitals, or county hospitals, or hospitals owned by the municipality, didn't want private people coming in with another hospital. So that's where the cons originally.
No, it really
was not it.
It started with the nephrology, the ability to be able to do dialysis, Paul, and those proliferated all over Mississippi. And then you had the radiology and different.
Cons have been with us for how long, though?
Oh, probably I guess probably 40 years, maybe 50 years longer than that. It's been a long time. It was prior to 2000 anyway.
All right. So we're going to bring it up again next year.
It's on my radar to do that very thing because I think the economy is such that we need to have capitalism move into that area.
We'll open up with a story that's making headlines this morning from Fox News, and it is pertinent to the Republicans. It is pertinent to the state of Mississippi. When we return, first story up with the Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann next. The president has just a message for us.
Some airlines, if you want 6 more inches between you and the seat in front, you pay more money. Look, folks, they're unfair and they hit marginalized Americans the hardest, especially people of color.
Okay.
Whatever.
What? Whatever.
You can't make this up, Paul.
No, you can't. So 6 inches and more space there is racist.
I don't know. Whatever.
All right.
Okay.
Republican lawmakers. Here's a story on Fox News this morning. Republican lawmakers in North Carolina are poised to push ahead with school choice legislation and other education reforms, a key policy area where the GOP is surging momentum following the high-profile defection of a Democratic legislator. State Representative Tricia Cotham, who, by the way, is a teacher and was a former principal also. She announced last week that she's joining the Republican Party after serving her deep blue Charlotte area district as a Democrat, while North Carolina Republicans already held a strong majority. Now they have a veto-proof supermajority. There is a new supermajority of Republicans in North Carolina, and they are going to be pushing for school choice. Why haven't we done that in our state?
Well, I expect that's going to come up, Paul. Actually, the first thing we had to do, of course, was to get our system right. And we need to pay our teachers sufficient to have enough teachers to do that. I mean, to have public education, have enough teachers. And then this past year, as you know, we put in an additional $100 million, not into superintendents or principals, but we put it into the classrooms.
But we didn't change the formula.
We did not change the formula. The House resisted that, and they said they didn't have enough time. So I've already started with our chairman saying, okay.
Why wasn't that introduced earlier in? Because the Senate put that on the table late in the session.
It did, because it was very complicated. We had to go back and look at every different school district, how they were affected by the current formula, and then we offered to change the formula, which actually would reduce the amount of MAEP formula and would make it achievable by the Senate and the House. And it took a long time. There are a lot of numbers. I mean, we have over 100 school districts, and everyone's different. And then you had to play into the teacher pay raise. They didn't put that in the formula last year. So you had to really balance a whole bunch of numbers. Yep. And then we had to talk to virtually every superintendent about it and how this would affect everybody and members of the legislature. So it took a long time to put it together. But it is the basis for further negotiations with the House, and I intend to start on those immediately.
If you have a state official who is getting a certain amount of money and said they need more money, but they're not counting several avenues, revenue streams in that.
Right.
And that's what and as just a voter out there, just a single voter, it aggravates the bejeebers out of me because I asked this question: the $80,000 cap that's over that on lottery,
that's been running $40 million a year.
$40 million a year, tens of millions.
Right.
That's not counted.
No.
Then we find out another stream of is not counted.
The pay raise, $246 million, wasn't counted. Our $100 million wasn't counted. If you added all that up, we overfunded. The story is on liberal media this morning. The story is that you still have not met the MAPP formula. I know, Paul. They get to write whatever they want to, and you get to say whatever you want to. It's a free country. But no, you're exactly right. If you look at all the pockets of funds that we're putting into public education, including the teacher pay raise, this didn't go into the formula. The $100 million didn't either. So, you look at all of that, and it makes you wonder exactly what we need to do. But the formula is just a formula. The dollars are hard dollars. Those are what really went into public education, and that was, I think, was very helpful.
Could I ask one more question? We'll go on to something else.
Yeah.
Why hasn't that made a difference in the poorest performing schools? Because more money has been pouring in for years on this, but it hasn't made a difference in some of these schools. Yeah. Money has not translated into better scores, better students graduating.
Right, and it's pockets of that, Paul. Like I was talking to one university president yesterday about his incoming class and what it looked like, and they had the highest GPA and the highest ACT that they've ever had coming from Mississippi students. So it is working in certain places, and in others we continue to struggle, and those are F schools. And I will tell you, I have been on a tear about one particular school district. I'm not going to line them out here. It's been an F school, like F five times, 5 years, and they got a COVID pass, so really probably longer than that. And I really can't understand how we're continuing to have no performing. Those kids hadn't had a decent education in 5 years, and I've really been working with the Department of Education, looking at how we can improve those, or whatever other steps need to be taken.
What's your thoughts on the rejection of the State Superintendent of Education nominee?
You know, we that came out of the Senate, and the Senate. You get to influence, I think, some legislation by where it goes, that kind of thing, as a lieutenant governor. But that's a vote that I try to stay pretty much out of. The senators really are zealous about the fact that they get to vote for people to be approved. For whatever reason, you can talk to them, they voted not to seat that person. They also voted not to seat a nominee from the governor. Mm-hmm. They didn't seat a former Department of Education board member when I first came there. They didn't seat her either. She was a former senator, and they didn't vote to put her on the board. So they didn't vote to do the head of MDOT that had been there forever. So those individual hearings, and that the senators that work there take those very seriously. Each one of them does their own research on those people. A lot of times you follow the chairman and the vice chairman's work on various committees. But when you talk about advise and consent, that is a personal vote for every one of them. And in this particular instance, it wasn't close.
Go back to school choice. One more thing on this one. I heard someone say that school choice really wouldn't matter in Mississippi because we have no choices in some of these poor areas. And I thought that was a shallow thing to say, because you don't do it for today. You do it for the future. And who knows what's going to pop up in some of these areas that could make money off of it, or be a charter school or something like that. That would give a better education and put some competition in the future, 5 years down or 10 years down, to solve this.
It's short-sighted, Paul. A lot of the work that we're doing in education is for the future. That's for those of you out here. That's your future employee. That's your future next-door neighbor. That's your future employer. Those are the kids that we're educating right now, the seeds of the future. And so the charter schools, as you know, there are more of them coming online. I went to one of them the other day just to watch how they were operating. And there will be alternatives, I think. The parents are the best ones to make these kinds of determinations. They need to be able to have the alternative to having higher education and education going through those. And we devoted, Paul, we now have 140 coaches, career coaches in our schools. We never had that before. We pushed that. We have our early learning collaboratives. We increased that to $2,500 per child. So we have been devoting. We did dual credit this year. The early learning collaboratives are 4-year-olds and up. Then we did dual credit to get them into community college, and we did coaching, career coaches this year. So we're putting a lot of money into the future of Mississippi, which is the best thing we got in Mississippi is a child's brain. And to give that child that opportunity to proliferate and to be a talk show host or whatever they want to be is
God
really...
God forbid.
Well, sooner or later, everybody's got to have a spot. So I'm real excited about the amount of time and effort that we're going to have, and we'll be working really hard on education in the future. We've got a good predicate
and part of that is workforce development also. And
it's been great.
And we talked about that yesterday, and we got more to come on that one.
We shrunk that from 42 to 7.
Time is almost out of here, and I just can't even believe this. And anything on your list that you absolutely wanted to get to?
Well, we gave business deductions for total write-offs for every expenditure of capital that companies make, and that's going to really expand, I think, people buying machines to start equipment and that kind of start new businesses. And our healthcare we talked about, put $103 million in there. But one of the things that's a long term is infrastructure. Now, we are putting, we did this, which I thought was instead of going and picking spots, we got MDOT to give us a 3-year plan, and we funded it. Now, we are funding Highway 49 and Highway 90 on the coast, I-55 in DeSoto County, 15 in Ripley, Interstate 20 exits. All over Mississippi, we are funding infrastructure.
And we had that opening yesterday of that highway also,
right?
Over in East Mississippi. I'll let you finish your thoughts on this one in the final segment. Coming up with the Lieutenant Governor next.
Thanks, Paul.
Excuse me, Senator Kennedy has just something he wanted to say.
President Biden has another year and a half to discover new and innovative ways to suck.
Thank you, sir, very much. Now back to
I hope he stays and doesn't run for governor.
Oh, man, me too. That would be a treasure.
Yeah,
lost.
we need to have him stay around.
Wow, Lieutenant Governor, go forth, sir. And
I was going to tell you,
thoughts.
one of the things that also, I'm trying to tell you things that you don't see so much. Paul, we paid off $600 million in debt. Now, that's never been done before. And we also have our rainy day fund is full at $700 million. So we paid off your credit card and we paid up your savings account. That's really important to the long run of Mississippi. If we have some type of inflation epidemic that comes to here, we will be in a position to weather that storm, whether it be a natural storm or an economic storm. So I'm really pleased with the fact that we are running Mississippi like a business. On that infrastructure, doing that work on I-55 in DeSoto County, Highway 90 and 49 on the coast, and all the way across the coast, where the legislature appropriated money for a ring road basically in Gulfport that will open a whole side of economic development there. Long Beach's harbor has had real troubles for a long time. Mayor Bass is a great guy down there. Mayor Rafferty, the downtown in Ocean Springs, giving them an opportunity to build a new center down there, convention center, all the way across the coast, all the way across central Mississippi in Vicksburg. We're actually building a part of the Archives and History Museums that will be the entrance to the park in Vicksburg, one of our largest viewed areas in Mississippi. People come there just more than just about anywhere else. Yeah. But all the way across, you're seeing us devote huge amounts of money to infrastructure. We matched...
Inclusive of state parks, too, by the way.
Our state parks were one of my peeves, and so we had $38 million put in last year. I meet with them about every 3 months on what's going on. We'll have 5 finished with new cabins, Paul, and new places you can park your RVs and stuff. Good. Next year, I want to do another 5. We allocated money to do that. Really important that our people can go down there.
And just want to throw this in here. The Gen Zs and the millennials, it seems that they have rekindled their desire to go out and try the parks. And so it's good timing.
Yeah, I want you to be able to take your child and go fishing in 20 or 30 miles, not have to drive, to Florida or something. And we've got great from Tishomingo to Buccaneer. We have great parks from Roosevelt to Coleman. We've got them all over, and we are about a third of the way. And by the end of next year, we'll be over half the way through of renovating every one of them. And there'll be a place you'll want to take your child or your family or spend a Friday night or whatever. I'm real interested. I think that really is a family-oriented thing at a very affordable cost.
Oh, it is.
The new cabins are great, Paul.
When our kids were younger, that was one of the top things we. Right. I don't think there's one in the state of Mississippi that we hadn't frequented more than once, even before we had the camper. We went into and it was the Columbus one, Lake Lowndes. It was just incredible. Now I want to go back to. And by the way, when that happens, would love to on this show. Maybe have some promotionals with you to give away a cabin every once in a while.
I'd love to do that. Wait till you see. We had architects redesign all the cabins. We've worked with Archives and History. We have some CCC cabins we're redoing like they were 50 or 100 years ago. So, yeah, it's just going to be
It's
cool.
one of the most relaxing simply because when you get through, you could be in the hills of Tennessee, but when you get through, your drive home is not that long.
Yeah, and it's a couple $100 for the whole weekend instead
That's
of
exactly right.
whatever. It saves you gas on top of that.
$700 million is what you said on the rainy day fund. What is it exactly? Do you know?
Well, we're required to do 10% of the budget, and it's about $650. It's about
So it's around $700 million.
$700 million, a little short of that.
One more thing, and I hate to push you here, but are you still concerned about, with all of this, the $600 million debt paid off, et cetera, where we are with PERS?
Yes, I was pleased that PERS came to us and came to the House. Really, the House was in negotiations. I didn't meet with them, but came to them and said they wanted until fall to come up with a plan to help make PERS, make sure that it's solvent for everybody, and it's an absolute necessity and an irrevocable contract for me anyway, and for the Senate and the House to make sure that it's funded. Mm-hmm. So I was pleased they said they wanted to come back in September with some ideas on how PERS should go forward, and so we're waiting on them to come, and I'm looking forward to that. And that's an absolute necessity. That comes before everything else.
I think we've covered quite a bit of things out there. Most of these bills will become law in July.
July 1st, yeah.
You don't think nothing's been vetoed yet?
It has not, and of course everybody waits with bated breath. The governor has his own ideas about some things, and he vetoed a couple last year out of 400, so it wasn't very many. But Paul, I want to tell you this.
Yes.
We have the brightest future in Mississippi we've ever had. Our financial position is excellent. We're pouring money into teaching and infrastructure and education and long-term things that make us a better state. So I will tell you, this 4 years was probably historical, and I anticipate we're going to have another 4 years that is historical.
Looking forward to it. Be a little bit newer leadership over in the House, but change is always good, sir. All right. It was not to say the Senate too, by the way, but I don't want to get
I made no comment. We like consistency in the Senate, Paul.
Well, I just wanted to be fair and balanced there.
There you
Back
go.
with more coming up next.
Thank you.